Hi everyone, this is Terry with homeschoolgardens.com. Today I'm checking in on my urban worm bag, which I set up a little bit over 2 weeks ago. This will be the third time that I'm feeding it. So I wanted to show you one thing quick before we get to feeding it. This is the bottom. This is where you harvest the castings. And if you see, I haven't put any kind of bin underneath it yet. I've been meaning to catch any extra liquid, the leachate. But I haven't had any, which is good. But you can see that I have a little bit of compost or castings coming out of the bottom by the zipper. I haven't unzipped it at all yet. I'm thinking I might do that next week. So when I set this up, I put in 3 trays from a Worm Factory 360, 2 trays that were being processed, and the one that I was currently feeding. And so the bottom tray that I put in, the one that I put in first, that's sitting at the bottom here, it needed about another month before I wanted to harvest the castings. So probably in a week or 2 that should be ready to harvest, and we'll get that, see how it works for the first time. So here it is. I have dry bedding on top, and let's pull it back to see how the worms are doing. This is the area that I fed for the first time 2 weeks ago. And let's see, I'm going to just grab a chunk to see what we have here. And we have lots of worms. I can't really identify much in the way of food. Little bits and pieces here. So that food is pretty much gone. Oh, look at that. Let's see if I can get a better video picture. So, I normally don't dig into my worm bin at all, but with setting this up, I just want to explore to see how things are going. So no food left over there. And that was 2 weeks gone. This is what I fed last week. There we go. And let's see what we have here. It's nice and moist. We actually have more worms I'm seeing down here than we do on the other side. Those red sparkly things that kind of shine, those are mites. The red mites, they're okay. They're not going to do your worms any harm unless there gets to be too many, and then they just outcompete for food. So I don't like seeing them, but they're really not a nuisance at all. We just don't want to get them to be too much. So still seeing a little bit of food, but actually not much for that side only being a week old. So when I feed in pockets, what they call pocket feeding. So I fed the first time over here, and then the next week over here, and then I'll be doing this corner today in that corner, and then I'll come back around here. And by the time you come back to the original corner, you want the food all gone. But as we can see, it's gone now. So I've been feeding 1.5 pounds of vegetable scraps and fruit scraps from the kitchen, mixed with dry bedding. I do weigh it out, so I know it's 1.5 pounds. When I started weighing and being consistent with how much and how often I fed, my worms did better. And they processed through more food, and I got more castings more quickly. With my Worm Factory 360, I was feeding 3 pounds of food a week, and I cut that back for this just to make a slow start. Now these worms they're established, they came from another system. This isn't just a fresh bin that I started out with, so no matter what system you use, if you have a fresh system, you don't want to feed that much. You're going to be feeding in the handful. But I've kind of passed that phase of this worm farming since this bin came from the Worm Factory 360, so this was already established. So I think I'll feed the 1.5 pounds today because that's what I have, and then I'm going to either up it and still continue to feed once a week, or maybe I'll feed twice a week and do 1.5 pounds each time, which is what I was doing with the Worm Factory. So let's go ahead and feed them. So this is what we have for dinner tonight. Most of it is carrot tops. Let me see if I can zoom in or get a focus better. These little paper bits are shredded paper egg cartons. That's what I use. I always mix bedding in with what I'm feeding. You always want to err on the side of too much bedding. Too much food can cause problems. So we have a lot of carrot tops, some bell peppers, coffee filter, and coffee grounds. And it's kind of hard to see, but I have a lot of spent herbs in here from teas and infusions and such. This is actually a pretty dry batch of food. Normally, when I feed, I always freeze and then thaw, and the thawing process releases a lot of moisture. And so most of this bedding is pretty damp, although not completely saturated when I feed. And as you can see here, today most of it's actually dry, which is fine. Having the bedding too wet just increases the moisture, and it can lead to leachate, which is not a good thing to have. So this, a lot of the food in here is not moisture rich, so it's not going to be a really wet feed. So let me dump this in. So when I dump in food, I still keep a little bit of the dry bedding below it, just as kind of a layer. Here we go. And usually when I make up my food, I put ground up eggshells in it for grit, but instead of doing that this time, I decided to take it off to the side and just add it now. So this is powdered eggshells. I do use a coffee grinder. I don't share it with the coffee, but you can see the dust coming up because it is powdered, so don't breathe that in. But I use a coffee grinder to powder the eggshells, and you want them very fine. Coarser ones will break down, but they won't provide as much grit as the finely ground ones, and it also helps as a pH buffer. So there you go, and then I'm going to add some more bedding and cover that up. And this is cardboard, shredded cardboard. I recently found a shredder that will do cardboard. You're usually looking at least 12 sheet capacity shredder to do cardboard, and I found a 16 sheet on a used sales group. I didn't realize that it was not cross-cut, so they're bigger pieces, but I'll still keep my eye out for a cross-cut. Still wasn't bad for 20 bucks. So there you go, that's the bedding, new feeding. So I'll check back probably in a few days. I'll feed again, or in a week, and I'll just up the amount of food considerably because they're going through it pretty fast. Alright, thanks for watching.